be kind, be focused on others, be a steward of your craft, and take the opportunity to take action and execute on something that's greater than your own good.
Hello, and welcome to the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast, a show that cares about healthcare. Each week, we sit down with some of the top industry minds to discuss how this healthcare system works, what solutions actually deliver results for employers, and how do everyday Americans get access to better and cheaper care. So whether this is your first day on the job, or you're a grizzled industry veteran, or if you even randomly stumbled upon this podcast, I promise you that this show is full of information to help you understand this crazy world we call U.S. healthcare. So thanks for tuning in to the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast. Let's go make healthcare better together. All right, dude. Sean Wood.
What's up, dude? I mean, dude, this has been, how long have we been talking?
We've been talking about this for about a year and a half. We've been doing the dance, and obviously you recommended some people to come on too, but here you are, which I guess I'll say who you are. You're Sean Wood, SVP of National Partnerships with ParetoHealth.
That's me.
Yeah, dude. You representing on the vest and everything.
Dude, this is the only way I roll these days. Yeah. When I'm with Spence, I got to keep my vest on.
Dude, I will say I've had my fair share of days in that vest, man. It's a pretty killer vest.
It is.
But Sean, we're going to talk about sales today, right? We're going to talk about building relationships, national partnership channels, all the stuff.
That's it. Yeah. Really being able to dive into, for me, what drives my purpose and my intent. And I feel like the opportunity to support others and being more likable, being more supportive, more collaborative is just something that, you know, when I was thinking about the opportunity to come on here and like what's an opportunity to give back to people and a transfer of knowledge, I think there's a lack of collaboration that exists in the B2B space today. And I felt like me and you getting on this amazing platform as an opportunity to share that.
Would you say we're collaborating about collaborative sales? Let's get a little pun here, but
we are.
So why don't we get to know you, man? I know you really well. Ever since you came up and said hello at one of our members' meetings.
Day one.
Told me, you know, I helped, I guess, in part, make your decision to come to Pareto, and I would love to tell that story. But let's go back further in your life, man. You've got some interesting travels, a little bit of pro basketball in your history, and then
been all over the place.
Definitely want to hear about your work history as well. So why don't you give us the story?
Yeah, of course. So just a little bit of background about me. So I was born in upstate New York. Dad was military. Had the opportunity to bounce around. Came from a little bit of a broken home growing up, and at the time, you know, it's really what led me to where I am today. You know, you look back and you always ask the question as a kid when things happen, and you're trying to decipher why has this happened and why has this occurred. And so for me, it was trying to solidify that. I found an outlet through collaboration with partnering through basketball. I mean, basketball became this outlet for me that took me to high school, college, and was in Australia for a little while as well. But, you know, what drove me from an early time frame in my life was just wanting to be a part of a community and being a part of a team environment. And from, when I say broken home, my family was amazing, but parents were just separated, and dad was military. So he bounced around, which meant I bounced around, which meant I was constantly meeting new people and having to reacclimate to different schools and different people of different race.
Well, that's interesting just hearing you tell that story. And I don't know all of your background, but it seems like a constant would have been basketball that always give you an identity when you bounced around as well, right?
You're exactly right. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not the most athletically talented, but I work hard. And so for me, the driver of what created my success through high school and college and was one, having the ability to understand my strengths, but also have awareness and acceptance of my weaknesses as well. Yeah. I just worked hard because it put me in a situation where I was surrounded by others. I was a point guard, so I was collaborating with others as well. And looking back, you know, having played in college and then even the time in Australia, I realized that, you know, there's different levels in life to sports and to anything that you do. And that the more that you can work and collaborate and partner with others, the better you can be to help create sustainment. And so what drove me then actually created opportunity for my success today and people that I partner with.
Well, just to know what I know about you too, being a point guard makes sense, not just physically, right? I get that. You're not 7 foot tall.
Exactly.
But neither am I. But what I get is, well, you think about what a point guard does. Ultimately, a point guard's job is to progress the ball, to run plays, to get the ball in the hands of shooters or your center. Your job is to be in service of the full team. And point guards don't always get as much shine for the role that they play, but they're really facilitating the entire offense, right? And that knowing what I know about you, that dovetails really well into your personality and your career too. So like, do you draw from that role into your work career?
I do. I mean, it's interesting. You asked ask that question the way that you did, because, when I look back and people say, oh man, what did you love about basketball? What did I like putting the orange ball through the round rim? I did.
Yeah.
But what I really enjoyed was that collaboration part of it. So in high school, I was point guard, but I also, led the state at one point for a short window of time, my senior year in scoring. And I don't say that to pat myself on the back. I say that to say this. When I got to college, I was starting off with the water boy and everything else. And then I had to real quickly realize that value is not necessarily given in sports based upon your ability to go and put buckets in the rim. It's your ability to teach, your ability to support and motivate others. And so for me, it was the weight room. It was, I ended up running cross country in college too.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Only as a means of being able to have myself in the best conditioning, so that when everybody else was coming back to school, our star athletes, guys from Australia that I played with that are amazing guys, 6'7", amazing shooters. One guy set the record for the NCAA in shooting before Mr. Reddick came and broke it at just a short window of time later. But for me, it was, how can I elevate my game to ultimately elevate theirs? And if they're enjoying their down season, I need to be at my peak. And so my value ultimately ended up being where I was able to support through the gym and through working out, through training and the knowledge of the game, so that I could then elevate others. And obviously it transcended into the court as well, but it was all the off the court stuff that I did that really made me successful in hoops.
Yeah. And I want to say, before we transition to your work career, I do have to ask about life in Australia, because, I've had friends that have played in Europe, in smaller countries in Europe. Australia is not a basketball league that I immediately think of as an opportunity to continue a playing career. So the basketball itself, but also life in Australia. I got to hear about that.
So the basketball component of it was fun. My best friend, even to this day, one of my best friends to this day, there's a guy named Brett Slaughter. It's just absolutely amazing. Retired now, had an amazing career. But for me, if I look back in Australia and summarize what that transformation was for me, it was, I'm dating myself, but this is going back 2002 timeframe. Okay. So it was, the dial-up was there. It wasn't like I was jumping online and social media and could phone home if things went awry. So it was really true self-identification, understanding Australians have this present moment awareness. They're all about sport, but they're all about getting stuff done. I remember going to lunch for the first time and expecting a 45-minute quick eat and go, thinking, well, it's going to delay into work. And it was 2 hours. And I said to the guys I was sitting with, well, what about work? They're like, well, mate, we're going to get it done. Like, you do what you got to do. And so it was that type of culture that really transformed who I was, even when I came back to the U.S.
Well, I think about it too, just like I went off to school in Missouri, right? So I was 7 hours away by car. So not super far away.
Right.
But thinking about being on the other side of the world, literally from family and friends. Like, did you feel like you're on an island, or did you have the support system there when you're going through ups and downs and things like that?
I did feel like I was on an island.
Okay, I mean, maybe you literally were. Didn't mean it exactly like that, but
because I was. But I mean, to give you an example, flying from Tampa at the time. Now I live in obviously Orlando, but from Tampa to LA was a 5-hour shot. And then you got your layover, and then LA to Melbourne. It's Melbourne, not Melbourne.
Is it really?
Yeah, you say Melbourne, they're gonna pause you. But to fly to Melbourne direct was 16 hours.
Dang.
And so, I mean, you real quickly have that awareness when you get there that, okay, this is far away. And so, but it was great. I mean, you don't have, like, I've been blessed to have spent time in Europe as well, where there's a language barrier at times, right? And so in Australia, you don't have that. So you see people that have a different way of living, that are just real centrally focused on being present and kind to others. I mean, they joke, and the joke can sometimes affect you if you don't have thick skin, but if it's just meant in good fun, you can learn to not take life too seriously, because it's not meant to be, and you can obviously treat others by being present, which I've taken that and really tried to have that be a pillar for how I lead, from a father to husband to work to everything else I do in life.
ParetoHealth is the largest benefits captive in the United States. With nearly 3,000 captive members, $1.3 billion of stop-loss premium in force, and almost 1 million covered lives, no other benefits captive comes close to ParetoHealth's scale. But it's not just about the numbers. ParetoHealth is a mission-driven organization, and that mission has two distinct parts. Number one, to make self-insurance simple and more accessible for small to mid-sized employers. And number two, to arm them with the most powerful cost management tools on the market. So if you're an employer frustrated with your healthcare outcomes, or you're a benefits consultant looking for an alternative to the status quo, it's time to consider ParetoHealth. ParetoHealth, where employers come to do self-insurance right, to do it easily, and to do it at scale. Well, so when did you know, it was kind of writing was on the wall, it's time to hang them up? We would say hang up your boots or hang up your cleats in soccer, but hang up your shoes.
I quickly had awareness.
Okay.
I mean, you get there and you see that, like going to college, you realize there's levels. You get to that world, you realize there's levels as well. And so I knew early, and part of me wanted to stay in Australia, and then family was back here in the States. And so, a couple conversations with my mom, I realized that, I need to get back to family and grow up. And so made a transition back to Tampa, and was there for, worked at an advertising agency of all things.
Okay.
That was just cold call 101. This was the 2003, 2004 timeframe. And picking up the phones and just trying to smile and dial and get people to buy ad space back when that was a thing, through print media and learning the art of cold calling, and just got to a place where I had two really good friends of mine that had moved back to Orlando, and it was a little more at the pace that I needed to be at to kind of mature in life. And so I moved over, and I've lived there ever since.
Well, so naturally, athletes tend to gravitate and succeed in the sales position. Mm-hmm. Did you know you wanted to get in that? Did you have to develop new skills that you didn't know you had, right? What was your transition? Because that's the reality of going from sport. I played college soccer, not nearly as high as level, but once your identity is no longer wrapped up in sport, right, and you don't quite know what you want to do, the reality sets into here's a real world. And nobody cares if I played soccer anymore. I got to go do something for somebody else or start my own business. I have to develop new skills. So how was that difficult for you? Were you a quick learner or what?
It was just a process of elimination.
Okay.
By knowing what I wasn't good at. And so when I first got out, you try to figure out, what are you going to do in life, right? You played sports, and you get these guys nowadays that make buku bucks, and they transfer out, and they haven't had the awareness to realize what's a transferable skill to outside of a sports world. And so I had an amazing coach in college who actually was a graduate assistant on the 76 Indiana team that went undefeated and won the national title, and Bobby Knight, and then amazing coach in the U.S. and overseas. And he knew real quickly, even though I didn't, that I wasn't going to be an NBA player. He knew real quickly that I wasn't going to have longevity at a different level outside of college. And so he started to work the strengths and develop the strengths in me that were transferable. And I know that now later in life, because he's still someone who I look up to as a mentor. But once I identified what those strengths were, I knew that I liked being around people. I knew that I liked inspiring people. And I knew that the number one way to do that for me, who's someone who's hyper and likes to talk, was I needed to go into sales.
Those personality traits do lend themselves well to sales, for sure. Yeah. When did payroll and ADP enter the equation?
So I first started off at Paychecks.
Okay.
So my first payroll opportunity, which was not that I wanted to get into payroll by any means, but had a headhunter reach out to me when I was in Orlando, was Paychecks. Correct. And it was small business. I had the Volusia County area, so that Daytona market, and I was, wearing my white long sleeve shirt, my blue Paychecks tie, and I was walking out and, signing up payroll 101 to plumbers in the back of their pickup truck and sweating my tail off in the Florida heat. And I had some amazing people, though. Yeah. I was very blessed at Paychecks to have amazing leaders who climbed the ranks and were all about collaboration and all about being a steward and supporting how they helped develop me. And so the transformation from there to ADP was driven on the fact that I wanted to get into more of a complex sale. So, in Paychecks, it was small business. It was, you're cranking anywhere from, on the low end, 100 plus to the average of people that were qualifying for their version of the President's Club in the 200 range.
Per year of sales? Yeah.
And that Orlando market was, we had the who's who. I was in the middle tier with some amazing salespeople. And so, I looked at Paychecks wasn't necessarily known for that mid-market enterprise segment. That they're now becoming a powerhouse there and building it out. But ADP's always had that bread and butter. ADP's big, right? Mm-hmm. They've got small business, they've got global, they've got the PEO model, they've got the mid-market. But I made the transformation because I had a good friend that was over there. and kept telling me about more complex sale and that, hey, you want to evolve in your career, you want to be able to still work around good people, but not have that same grind of the small business segment.
Well, what constitutes a complex sale in the world of payroll? Because I've never been in that space.
Yeah, it's a great question. So more employees. So mid-market was the 50 to 1,000 space, how it's defined traditionally and defined by ADP. And the bigger the companies are, and there's no absolutes in life, right? So some small businesses may ultimately have complexity as well.
Sure.
But typically more employees, more regulations that started to come down the pikes. I mean, over time, there was just more complications and more complexity. And so instead of going out and cranking, anywhere from 150 to 250 opportunities and deals over the year to be successful and be a leader on the sales board, at ADP, you could go out and crank 15 to 20 of those out.
I see.
But just more complicated, more collaborative,
and obviously
more solutions,
bigger deals,
bigger opportunities. Yeah. So that was the transformation.
Yeah. The context that I have from ADP is that one of my friends, college soccer buddy, transitioned from there to directly went into ADP, and he grinded his way out the first couple of years, did really well, but he was super motivated. For him, he was financially motivated. He wanted to be financially successful. He felt like sales was the best opportunity to do it, and then ADP has a reputation of helping people develop those skills. However, it also sometimes, at least from the outsider perspective, can be sort of sink or swim. If you're not cutting it, you're not going to make it. But those that do tend to have really flourishing careers as a result. Right. So my question to you then is, how were you able to navigate an organization like that and succeed in an environment that has very high standards?
Yeah, great question, because it is a scenario where you have to perform, which, by the way, I enjoy that. I mean, if you go back and just what we've talked about today, for me, from being an athlete, I mean, I enjoyed the collaborative portions, everything I talked about, but the ability to have metrics and perform was also something that was self-rewarding. And so that transferred over. And so back to what really I've been blessed with, I got lucky with. And I say lucky because I sought out these people. I had amazing leaders. I had an amazing mentor who's climbed the flagpole at ADP, runs to the Southeast now for them, but just was an amazing guy. He was early days in his career, took me under his wing, and I got to learn from him. Eventually, one day I got to pay it back too, because that's what great leaders do. It's the opportunity to help get those in positions where they can provide peer-to-peer coaching, but had just an amazing guy that helped me out. And then from there, it was about execution. It was about performance. It was about drive and collaboration. And then one thing ultimately led to the other. So I went from selling in a sales capacity, and then as I started to see opportunities arise, I was in a position where I started to be creative in my thinking. And biggest thing that happened is I had some things happen personally where my ex unfortunately got diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. That's a big driver of what brought me to Pareto for our mission statement. And then also, so that was a motivator. So you talk about the fear of someone having stage 4 breast cancer and having a little boy. It was like, okay, well, you got to grow up quick and you got to be responsible. And so that was a major influencer of my behavior. But you couple that on the personal side, along with seeing opportunity with the Affordable Care Act. When the employer mandate took place, it kind of became this perfect scenario of fire in the belly for me. And then also this opportunity to seize the day by seeing the Affordable Care Act and others. Yeah,
talk to me about that, man, because my benefits career actually immediately started post-ACA. So I would hear people talk to me about the before of ACA, and I understand the impact it's had on claims. But what was it you recognized about the opportunity that might create to not only pivot in your career, but grow in your career? Because you had a little bit of insight that I don't think everybody recognized. This is opportunity, not a problem. Right?
Huge opportunity. Yeah. And so really good question. So one of the things that early on, I had mentors, friends, peers, people that I observed. Part of my childhood was moving from one place to the next. And so one of the strengths that created in me, because I chose to align myself with people that I admired, and I didn't admire people that were doing bad things, at least not all the time. But the reality was I saw people learn, and I saw people be students of the game. Okay. And so when the ACA hit, I mean, we're talking a major litigation that came down through the Obama administration. But what I specifically studied and became a subject matter expert on was the employer mandate. And the reason I studied it is I was working at ADP, which was a payroll HR technology HCM company. And I had a lot of my success early as a salesperson working with benefits brokers.
Okay.
And so when I looked at the ACA and the employer mandate, and in 2012, when the Supreme Court ruled that this is in fact going to be a law, to unravel a Supreme Court ruling takes decades. So I was like, this isn't going away. I also looked at some of the lobbying that went in to getting the law over the finish line, and I knew, okay, this is here. And so then I realized, okay, for me to be a good partner with the guys and gals that were helping refer me business as a traditional salesperson, I need to study this. I need to get ahead of it. I need to be the first to market, and I need to be able to put my partners in a position to be able to differentiate themselves in a world that's getting.
So talk me specifics there. How did you help them differentiate themselves?
The first thing was, as someone who loves people and as a socialite, a little less now that I've got 4 boys and married, but at the time it was like I sat there and studied. And I studied. And when people say there's thousands of pages, I read thousands of pages over and over and over again. And then it wasn't just the studying, it was the ability to take something complicated, simplify it, reframe it so that people could process it without spending the same amount of time and energy into reading it so they could take action. If you can't take action, everything you're learning becomes just a nice to know versus a need to know. And so when I studied the law, I realized that payroll was going to be directly connected to HR, that was going to have a direct correlation to benefits, and the summation of all this lived in technology, and there was a potential penalty that we now know is true that was going to be enforced by the Department of Labor, specifically the IRS. And so as all of this came together, I ultimately took it upon myself to reach out to product internally and ask the question on, hey, can I help provide guidance? Can I help provide support? And the initial reaction was, wait a minute, you're a sales guy in Orlando. You need to be focused on selling. And then they real quickly realized that through my ability to help build custom reports based upon what the employer mandate was saying, I was selling. And so that started this trajectory of collaboration and working with marketing, working with product, working with service, working with sales, ultimately elevating in the organization to be someone that traveled around the country and spoke about the employer mandates, helped create the Affordable Care Act strategy that ADP deployed, and in turn took what I was doing locally and collaborating with my partners on the EB side. I was able to take it nationally.
Okay. Having spent years working alongside healthcare leaders, brokers, and employers, I know how overwhelming healthcare can feel for our customers. We've all been there. Those renewal conversations that never seem to get easier. Rising pharmacy costs and medical costs, and no real transparency into where healthcare dollars are going. That's why I'm excited about Nomi Health. They're not just fixing the old system. They've rebuilt self-funded benefits from the ground up. With Nomi's network, you can offer something truly different. No copays, no deductibles, zero out-of-pocket costs when members see a provider. It's the kind of benefit that makes everyone ask, why hasn't healthcare always worked this way? Ready to bring your clients something different? Visit nomihealth.com and see how Nomi is rebuilding healthcare, one employer and one community at a time. So why don't we, so that everybody here has an understanding or a frame of reference of when we talk about collaborative selling, what does that mean? They probably have an idea. Maybe they do it in their own careers. Maybe they have no idea what we're talking about. So why don't you define in Sean Wood's terms what collaborative selling is to you?
So for me, buyers are skeptics. And so I'm going to start with the end in mind, which is people are trying to influence the behavior of buyers who make decisions in clusters. The world we live in today, people are skeptical. And so team selling for me is how do I leverage someone's relationship with another person where I can cut through the noise of skepticism to earn the right to teach, to then guide somebody down the process of hopefully winning their business, assuming that it's the right solution or product for the right buyer. And so that's what team selling is. It's, do you have the trust in the right person? Are you collaborating? Are there goals and initiatives that are in mind, agreed upon? So often I sit down and have conversations with people in a sales environment and they're talking about partnering and collaboration. And I always ask, well, what are the goals that you have? Well, my goal for my partner is X. My goal is Y with regards to my overall quota. And my philosophy is like, well, that doesn't matter to them. It's about the partner. It's about the collaboration. And so team selling is when you have this co-authored goal in mind with a co-authored call to action. Like, how are we going to collaborate together to have a mutually agreed upon process that we run? And then we take action. We identify where there's misses. We course correct, and then we continue down the process.
Yeah, and I think real collaboration, right? It's easy to say that in sort of theory only or name only. We're going to collaborate. I'm going to help you.
Right.
But if it still feels like asynchronous. So I'm trying to get something out of you, or I'm trying to get a sale so I get compensated. I feel like eventually that will be found out, right? And there's going to be comeuppance for that. So collaborative selling really means you are truly solving somebody's problem and you're mutually working on that together so both of you benefit, right? And benefit over a longer period of time.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And it's meant to have an evolution too. So one of the things that you talked about, which is spot on, is you got to be able to shoot straight. Like that's rule number one. So one of my, to this day, one of my biggest mentors and close friends, taught me early that rule number one is shoot straight. Rule number four is stay out of trouble. And if you worry about those two, you don't need to know what number two and number three are. They take care of themselves, right? And so that's ultimately the case with partnering, and part of what has driven my natural evolution in my career to get into the channel sales, whether it be at ADP or now Pareto, has been all about shooting straight. It's been all about collaboration. And collaboration is not meant to be, hey, I've got a goal as a partner and you have a goal as a partner and they're going to just run side by side. It's about co-authoring a goal together. So I know what your initiatives are, you know what mine are, and together.
Well, shooting straight also has to, that's where trust gets developed. Because what if I shoot you straight and say, hey, this opportunity is just not a fit. Like we're trying to force it, but these are unreasonable terms, or we just no, for whatever reason, we can't get there. Shooting straight means the seller actually has that conversation with the buyer proactively and say, hey, you know what, Mike or Tom or Jane, I actually don't think this one's the right fit for your client. Let's both agree that it's not, and we'll move on to the next one. But sometimes you get, sellers that are push, and they will persuade to coerce somebody into buying something that's actually not in their best interest. That's that instance where I think eventually that might work in the short term. In the long term, that's going to create mistrust in a partnership.
Well, it's going to create no partnership.
Yeah, well, you're exactly right? Mistrust would ultimately lead to the dissolving of the partnership. But the shooting of the straight is really just about honesty, man. In terms that are good or situations are good, you say it. In the situations that are so-so, you say it. And then they're bad, you also acknowledge that, because together we're working on this. It's not one way or the other.
That's it. And it's interesting. You and I have talked about the Lippitt-Noster model, which is it's a model that was designed in 1987. It was a study that was done, and the long and short of it is in order to manage complex change with people. So we're two people. In this case, we do have similar organizations we work for, but let's just assume we didn't. And so we're trying to go out together and accomplish a goal. Well, you got to have a vision in order to understand what are you looking to accomplish. You got to have the skills needed. So if I'm asking you to accomplish a vision, do you have the skills needed to accomplish that? I got to incentivize your behavior. You got to be incentivized on a personal level to be able to go out and accomplish the vision and have the skills needed to do it. Are you empowered with tools and resources that will allow you to get there without having any type of frustration that comes out of that? Is there consensus? So are there people that believe in what we're trying to accomplish, and is there an action plan? So those are the models that live in this. The reason I say that as it relates to shoot straight, there's so often people will partner together because it's the trend in the organization. It's the cool thing to do. And then they go and they identify somebody to check the box. There's no clarity in the vision. There's an expectation that person's skill set doesn't meet. And so shooting straight isn't just hey, I'm going to show up and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be honest. That hopefully is a core principle for everyone. We know it's not, but hopefully it is. But it's also a matter of, are you setting expectations that that particular person has these skills, the motivation and desire to achieve? If not, you're working with the wrong person.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And that, I think it dovetails into when we talk about differentiation in a moment, because I think we can dive really deep into differentiation in terms of a product or service, but how you empower somebody to be differentiated, your buyer to be differentiated in the market as well. But I want to kind of double click on it's a Lippitt-Noster model, you said, right? What happens if you identify one of those criteria as not being met, right? So maybe give an example, whether it's a skills gap, whether there's not a mutually agreed upon vision, et cetera. How do you rework that or pivot in order to solve one of those components? Because I presume they're not all just there right away in any business, right?
I wish they were.
But every business would be flourishing then, right?
Yeah. So there's emotional. So if certain things are missing, and I'll walk through that with you, because that's the premise behind the model, is it gives you an opportunity to back in to what could be missing from the Lippitt-Noster model in order to be able to identify change that has to occur to course correct. So for example, if there's a lack of vision, which you'll find that from time to time within organizations or within partnerships, people are working together and there's no clarity of what the ask is. Well, there's confusion.
Yep.
Like, what am I supposed to be doing? I'm not 100% sure. I know I'm supposed to work with you. I know there's a top-down initiative. I know we're supposed to be collaborating. You seem like a cool guy, but like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Yep.
That's an issue. The other issue is if there's a situation where the skills aren't there. Mm-hmm. So we were talking hoops earlier, right? So if I had a coach that would just sit on the sidelines and go, hey, do this, do that in terms of the performance and how you're doing, that was an issue. But for me to get in and practice my skills to develop them, that would reduce anxiety on me when I got in the game and performed. And so when someone has a gap in their skills, that's real quickly identified if there's anxiety. So if I'm talking to somebody, I'm coaching them and I'm collaborating with them and trying to help support them in their day-to-day mission and create this co-authored go-to-market strategy, and I real quickly identify there's a skills gap, the way I identify that is I sense anxiety in what the ask is.
Yep.
Like, you know the vision, but your skills are a little bit diminished. Mm-hmm. Not at a knock on someone, they just maybe haven't had the opportunity to learn. So that's got to be addressed.
Yeah.
If people are slow to take action, like how often have you seen something in the B2B space where you're like, oh, this is amazing? Mm-hmm. Because you're incentivized. You see the why, but not everybody sees that. Not everybody has the same connections. And so if someone's missing the why, they're missing the incentive for them on a personal level. They'll get to it when they get to it.
When you mentioned the skills gap creating anxiety, I can think of just in my past experience, you observe behaviors where you go like, well, why is there maybe an effort problem? Or why are you not following up on that? What's going on? It's like, it's such an obvious step that's also a really easy step for a salesperson to take, but they're not taking it for some reason. Mm-hmm. I would suspect it's anxiety driven from their perception of their own lack of skills. And so they're afraid to take that step because they don't believe they can execute on whatever is necessary afterwards, right?
That's exactly right.
Okay, yeah.
And so sometimes that could be systemic in terms of organizationally, there's not processes and procedures that are clearly defined, which means there's anxiety. And I don't know, like I'm confused, but I've got anxiety because I think I know what I need to do, but I don't know that I got the skills to do what I think's needed.
Right.
So then it just becomes a series of dominoes and everything can.
Yes, and if you address that deficiency like that, you mentioned coaching kind of across your playing career, but also in sales. Mm-hmm. Like, how important is that mentorship or a coach, right? Or are we talking about somebody internally in an organization helping coach? Are we talking about possibly an outside party coming in to help coach a team? Like, what have you seen most successful?
So twofold. So I tend to find people identify a mentor in an organization that's been donned the mentor.
Okay.
This is going to be your buddy system. This is going to be your coach. This is going to be your person that's going to help develop you. What I've found to be really successful for me is I identify people that are within the ecosystem of what I'm looking to accomplish. So for me, within Pareto, I'm SVP of National Channel Partnerships. So my responsibility is to help Pareto collaborate and partner with our top national agencies in order to grow and retain market share.
Yep.
And so I've found mentors that are within that ecosystem so that as they're helping me based upon mutual collaborative experiences. So they've got a desire to see me get better.
Exactly.
I've identified them because I like them. I trust them. I've seen these skills and foundations that are there. They want to be a teacher. I'm not just observing someone that doesn't want to have the interaction. And through the collaboration, I know that we're going to have an enhancement of the overall goals that we have collectively through our partnership.
Yeah, so you think it sounds like obviously that's more of an internal role, if you will, the mentorship, than it is necessarily an outside party. But have you been in organizations that have identified deficiencies in their sales process and recognized they needed to bring an outside perspective, a consultant, in to help coach?
For sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I definitely have seen that. I also want to distinguish that I do internally, but it's also an external perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, having the collaboration and having a co-authored ability to have someone that, people want to help. Especially as people get promoted in organizations, bigger companies, more responsibility, more pressure.
Well, I derive such personal satisfaction of believing I have helped somebody, right?
Yeah,
and they get the win, they get the benefit. They often will come back at some point and tell you how much it helped. And it's just like there's a weird intrinsic reward just hearing somebody say, "Hey, man, you helped me out with this. Like, thank you." I've had a lot of messages that come through out of the blue, where somebody's like, "Your video you did, or this podcast, or whatever, helped me in my career, or prepared me for a job interview." And there's almost like nothing, even financial benefit, that I enjoy as much as knowing that something helped another person. Like that's such a profoundly personally rewarding thing to hear.
ClaimDoc is a medical claim auditing and member advocacy company. We provide fiduciary services to employer-sponsored benefit plans, and allowing them to create an environment where we ensure that the benefit plans are being charged in a fair and reasonable basis.
My business is basically people, and it become a real simple transition. We thought it was going to be far more complex. I've saved, we'll say, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I could not say enough about ClaimDoc.
And so I can imagine, right, too, is a mentorship. As you grow an organization, you and I are both in, kind of in these leadership roles right now, and both still growing in our career as well. You start to see more opportunities to do that now. And you start to realize, like, oh, I'm in the position now that I'm supposed to be doing that a lot more, right? Early in your days, you're just like, I got to make it. I've got to get there. I've got to achieve certain financial success. And there's a point you also recognize, like, I actually now have skills or things that I need to be passing on to other people as well. And nobody taps you on the shoulder and says, it's time to do this now. It's just you wake up one day and go, oh, that's actually a big part of my job.
It's a purpose. It's about connecting with your why. Not everybody has the same why, the same purpose, but
True.
I referenced one of my mentors at ADP, who's still an amazing friend, retired now, guy by the name of Mike Houston. He's salt of the earth. We're in Texas. He's a UT grad, and he's a hook 'em horns guy through and through. But one of the things that I admired about him so much is he had opportunities to be able to navigate north in the organization. And obviously there's a disconnect that happens where, and when you get higher up in the organization in big corporations, you get disconnected from the field.
Yeah.
Not in a negative way. It's just the reality of how, organizations have the hierarchies. And one of the things I admired so much about Mike is that he chose to stay in the role he was in because of the connection that it had to helping others. I mean, when this guy retired, it was like, a really good friend of mine, she put together like an historical look back, people that could do quotes about him. And she had to tell people no at one point because the amount of people that stood together were like, I want in. And it became like well, who's got a better quote that could support him?
Yeah.
And the reason why that type of response happened specifically for Mike, he was connected to his why. He real quickly knew that his why was about coaching, helping, inspiring others. And if he was wildly good at that, one, it creates longevity in his career, which it did.
Mm-hmm.
He called the shots when he was ready to retire. Two, it creates relevancy with the people that you're supporting because you've got real-time connection to others and you're helping. By helping, you're learning. So not only are you teaching, but you're learning in real time. What are the challenges that people are facing today? World's evolving quickly. Technology's evolving. Social trends are changing. If I'm a leader in a sales world and I'm not disconnected, I'm teaching, I'm learning, I'm able to then maintain a relevancy on what I'm teaching because I've got real-time connection points. Yep. And he did it so gracefully that it was something that inspired me to stop being the guy that wanted to go and get a title. I wanted to climb the corporate ladder or any ladder for that matter. And instead, I just figured, you know what? I'm going to focus on my why, helping, inspiring, coaching, and bettering others. And the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah. There's a couple subjects I want to cover now, and I'll sort of let you have carte blanche of which one you may go into next. But I do actually want to talk about your why in coming to Pareto, because you alluded to it earlier, but I really want to understand that transition. I think we need to touch on the differentiation product and as well differentiating your partners. And the last one, or whatever order you want to go in, is the buyer's dilemma. I think you've introduced me this concept, and I think you do a phenomenal job of positioning it. And so, like, whichever direction you want to go next is really up to you, but I want to make sure that we cover those points.
That'd be great. Yeah. Why don't we start with buyer's dilemma? Yeah. That's okay. So,
what buyer's dilemma? Let's even explain when I say
what that
term.
is,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that's really interesting as we talk through this, as I call it, this buyer's dilemma. If you think about the B2B space, and you just go back the iPhone was created in 2007.
Jeez.
So if you think about the fact that we're not even 2 decades into a digital transformation for how people receive insight and how they learn, that's bullet one. Yeah. And bullet two is over the course of the last 15, 16 years, you've had this major uptick in the amount of organizations that were targeting buyers.
Yeah.
So really effective people that were really successful people that were working in organizations, working in corporations that went through 2007 to 2009 and lost some sort of retirement to that stayed in the game longer. And then 2020, we know what happened there with the pandemic. Those people were like, you fooled me once, you're not getting me a second time. You saw this exodus with talented people that went out and started their own companies. Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds great in theory. theory, but that desire to have control over their outcomes created noise at the buyer level.
Yep.
And it's a dilemma because all these great people who had access to the now digital age of transferring knowledge to buyers created so much noise that buyers have just shut down.
Yeah, and there's two distinct buyers, I think, in our equation that are important to talk about. There's the employer, ultimately, right? So the individual company buying your good or service. And then for us specifically to benefits or the captive space is the consultant or broker, right?
That's exactly
And
right.
that consultant is sort of the middle in between us and that employer.
Yep.
Both of them have a lot of noise. So why don't we talk the employer's noise right now?
So we're going to do that, and then I might be the ask her questions on the second piece.
Okay,
Just because you're the one who got me to think through it on a different lens. So I love that you went there. That's awesome. So that's the mind of the buyer. The buyer's dilemma is the fact that there's a desire to evolve. There's a desire to embrace technology. We're no longer in the days of build it yourself. People want to partner. People want to embrace technology, and access to information is great. I mean, you can go and look at data and subsets of data and you're, wow, this all looks intelligent. It all looks relevant. I'm inspired to purchase. Who do I purchase from? What do I purchase? And so there's this overabundance of pressure on decision makers within mid-market employers to address company challenges by solving it through automated solutions. They just don't know who to turn to, which is exactly why COIs come into play. And so framing up the benefits dilemma from my days in the ACA, if you go back pre-employer mandate, pre-Affordable Care Act, so go 2012, 13, 14, before it actually went live, January of 2015, you know, it was a nice to know. Like my partnership with the local office for Brown & Brown in Orlando, and John Spooner and Pete Matulis and Brian, guys that are amazing that helped me get to where I am. Like that wasn't a need in the market.
Yeah.
There was no buyer that was sitting there going, HR wasn't going, oh, you partner with John or you partner with so-and-so. It wasn't the case. Or my guys that were at McGriff, now MMA, like that, there was never
But it sounds like you had to sort of compel them around that it should be something they consider, right? Like
you're exactly
it was too
right.
nascent at the time for them to know for sure, right? And I'm not saying any one of those individuals didn't recognize it, but your job was to sort of show them the picture, right? To paint them the picture of why this is important.
That was it. It was a world where there wasn't this tidal wave behind it of do this or else, which is what the mandate did, because it forced, if you think about what that dilemma caused, it forced employers to have their benefits broker and their technology provider and their HR department, call that the trifecta, come together in a collaborative, cohesive environment to drive desired outcomes.
Yeah.
It never was the case before.
Well, so what, if you're a solution provider, right? How do you pierce through the noise? Because we got, those two stakeholders. Consultants trying to get in front of the employer. The employer's got a lot of people calling them to try to get them to buy stuff. This person's also trying to get in front of them to help broker and consult around the stuff they should buy. So you've got all these people vying for attention simultaneously. So how do we pierce through all that noise, the signal, if you will, through that noise?
Right. So great question. The first thing I would say is, depending upon the role of the broker, so some brokers are not validated, they're new, and they're trying to build a book of business. And so for them, piercing through the noise means they have to have an ability to understand how to differentiate themselves, to not be generalist. So one of the models that I've always lived by is in selling is I call SCDC, and it's not South Carolina District of Columbia. It's, are you specific with your message? Have you done enough research to go talk to somebody organizationally and be specific with what you're talking about? Bullet 2 is, are you being, in terms of being specific with who you're talking to? So I'm coming in and you're a CFO for an organization. Am I customizing? So the C is customize. Am I customizing my message to you as a CFO? You ultimately care about the organization. You're a greater good guy. But when it's all said and done, you have certain needs as a CFO that differ from HR, that differ from a COO. So S is specific. C is customized. The D is defendable. People don't want to be guinea pigs. So if I'm out having a conversation, do I have a defendable product, a defendable solution? Because I've worked with others, and the others that I've worked with have a similar circumstance as yours with a perceived desired outcome. I may not know because I'm early on in how I'm engaging with you. And then last, is it complementary? I don't mean, hey, Sean, you got nice hair, because I've been told that about 20 years ago. But I mean, it's a situation where you're complementing the ecosystem of how the organization does business. Yeah. So back to your question, if I'm trying to go to market and pierce through the noise for a producer that's not validated, I am slowing down to speed up. I'm doing the research so that I have a specific message. I'm customizing it based upon who I'm trying to target. We know all decisions are made in clusters. That means there's multiple people that make the decision. So I'm going to target them individually, and one of them is going to stick. Am I defendable in my messaging so that I can have a message that's been proven based upon results we've had with other organizations? And am I complementing the ecosystem of what that particular organization works with? If I'm a validated producer and I've got a book of business, well, what better way to go create a defendable story that has a specific discussion point that's customized to a particular user that complements an ecosystem by looking at your own book of business and identifying it.
Yeah, and that's sort of the complementary piece I want to touch on, right? And then we can kind of intertwine Pareto to a degree. And I'm very conscientious. I don't always want to make every episode about Pareto, but I think it obviously makes sense to go into that here. When you look about those criteria, so it's specific, right? Customizable, defendable, and is it complementary? Like, I think, I'm trying to be objective, but I think we check most of those boxes, right? And so then when you look at, if I'm a consultant trying to get in front of employers in 2024, this may come out in 2025, right? So like in today's modern age, you have to have something that really is differentiated in the market. And they're all looking for that, but there's so many players and there's so much noise. And it's like, how do you trust the solution without having a defendable like track record of success? And so I look at what we're offering and being able to check those boxes, like us helping empower those consultants to differentiate themselves in front of their buyers' eyes as well. And so I wanted you just kind of hear you wax a little bit about that.
So while I was at ADP, and I had an amazing team with me. So still one of my closest friends to this day, a guy by the name of Bruce Whitridge, who's just absolute salt of the earth. He's the one who coined the phrase, "nobody knows," which is just an absolute gem to use when you get asked questions that have no relevancy to anything. It's the art. So I had to deliver that. But one of the things that Bruce, real quickly, just supporting on the collaboration aspect of it, was in a world where, and I'm not by any means stating that ADP's been commoditized, but there's a ton of different vendors out there in the HCM space. So there's a lot more of them. And when there's a lot more of them, you have to have a unique way that you can go to market and differentiate. And so Bruce just had this really artful way of supporting the go-to-market strategy with ADP on how there was a differentiation in a world that commoditization is not the right word, but there's a lot of
options,
a lot of options out there. And so knowing that I had this really great network of people up and down organizations within national and regional agencies for that matter, and smaller shops too. But I had this relationship where I was continuing to gain shelf space. And it was like playing Pictionary. I could see the sand starting to dwindle out of the hourglass. And so I was having conversations with executives about just their challenges and things that they were trying to identify and how to support. The number one theme that was bubbling to the surface, we're now going back almost 2 years because I had a 13 and a half years at ADP, 13, it's a long time. I mean, family and everything, they are family. And so for me, I took my time looking at Pareto. But when I got feedback from partners that controlling cost in healthcare was this absolute uncontrolled expense that wasn't getting better, and coming off of the heels in 2022 of the pandemic with people starting to utilize healthcare, there was this boogeyman in the closet that we all now know is out.
Well, not only was it not getting better, it also wasn't staying static, right? It was accelerating in the outcomes being
rapidly.
Rapidly.
And so because of that rapid acceleration you're talking about, even though I had this unbelievable team and value proposition at ADP, time is limited. And when you have executives that are starting to limit their time because they have this rapid evolution that's happening in uncontrollable cost, I started to poke my head around to see, well, what is controllable and how can you control it? And so I had seen mentors and friends and other people that were trying to figure out ways to solve that. One of them actually ended up joining the Pareto team. And I received feedback from partners that captives in the EB space were growing. They were solving problems. They were trying to put solutions in place to provide mid-market employers an opportunity to be able to defend against this uncontrollable train that left the station. And that's what piqued my curiosity. And that's what started the engagement. That's when I had the unbelievable opportunity to talk to Mike, talk to Clayton, talk to Cav, and our team's obviously grown since. But it was really connecting those dots from, if I'm looking at my ecosystem of partners, what's relevant to them, because it's about them, and what was relevant to them in the EB space, having been running the broker channel at ADP, was controlling costs in healthcare.
Yep.
As I then connected the dots to an unbelievable solution that was designed to support that, I learned more about Pareto. And then you couple that with the fact that we talked earlier about my Christina, my ex, who got stage 4 cancer, and unfortunately this year had passed away. I real quickly was like, these are my people. They've got a similar mission statement. And having met Clayton, Cav, and everybody, I was like, oh, these are Jack.
Yeah, and not everybody sees it, right? And we've got competitors or people that from the outside may not understand the inside, this thing that we didn't create, but we get to be a part of.
Yeah.
It's honest, right? It's you believe that everybody else believes in the mission, and it's authentic in that way. So
Could
it's
not
not
agree
like,
more.
Yeah,
Could
it's
not
not like, hey, we've got a great public image, and everybody outside sort of like goes, oh yeah, those guys are awesome, but then inside it's this like sinister machine.
Yeah.
It's actually better on the inside than I think even the outside perspective. And when I came here, it was very similar. It's like, oh, wow. Like I thought I knew what I was getting into, but I didn't know. And then in a positive way, the realization like there's something bigger here. There's a movement here that's going on. And I think your recognition pre-ACA and the passing of that mandate, I think a similar shift is now coming in the marketplace with the CAA. And I don't know if the government only has A's and C's when they make acronyms, but
it feels that way.
The Consolidated Appropriations Act, I think will have a similar, if not bigger impact on healthcare, especially like ERISA-based self-funded healthcare, where these plan sponsors or employers are now going to have different mandates. There's some obviously pending lawsuits that are out there right now. We could see a seismic shift in the way that people purchase healthcare solutions in the next couple of years.
I mean, from jump, that was, once you saw what the Affordable Care Act was, it wasn't written in law by the Obama administration. It was actually designed and developed by Carter. And then it went through and almost passed with Reagan. Reagan had a shift in where he was spending funds and where focus was. A lot of it was on the defense side. And then as you start to look down, obviously Clinton with education. And then as you scroll forward, Bush Jr. was obviously on the defense side. Then fast forward, Obama came in and it was focused on that piece of it. What I paid attention to was I looked at the shifting of how the government agencies created collaboration to lay a framework for future initiatives, and you just nailed on it. Yep. So it's I had people say, well, is this going to be single payer one day? No,
I don't think
there's
so.
Zero chance of that. There's too much opportunity that's being gained by entities that are controlling the healthcare space for that to ever happen, when you've got a thing called lobbying that's still a word in the English dictionary. And what you just referenced with regards to CAA is just that next evolution of identifying as people grow and as the Affordable Care Act has created more people participating in healthcare. What you've done is you've taken a stadium that had a population, let's just say we're at, Go Blue, we're at the Michigan Wolverines, we're at the big house, they can seat 105,000 people. We got 30,000 playing. The ACA took your 30,000 and jumped it to 90.
Yep.
We're not still at 105, but we're at 90 now. Michigan's not playing, no pun intended, sorry, Western Michigan, but they're now playing Ohio State, right?
Yeah.
And so I give that analogy because with more people creates more complexity. With more complexity creates more opportunity for government to have regulations, and regulations create opportunity for winners and losers.
Yep.
And so it is happening, and you're 100% right.
Yeah, and I think regardless of exactly what the outcome is, and I can't pretend to have a crystal ball and suggest I know what it's going to be, even if some of the lawsuits are unsuccessful, even if some of the we call penalties, if financial penalties for not being good fiduciary aren't enforced. What it has done is raised a general level of awareness in consultants' minds and employers' minds and everybody that revolves around this ecosystem, a recognition there gross inefficiencies inherent in the current traditional system. And the more they get exposed, the more it frustrates people and the more they demand a solution for those things. So even just by casting everybody's eyes and their vision at it, even if the other things don't come to fruition, everybody's looking at this now, whether it's pharmacy benefit managers, whether it's reference-based pricing, you name, there's a laundry list of things that we need to fix. General level of awareness is now risen, where you might actually see average people talking about these things. Mark Cuban is pointing their direction at rebates and pharmacy benefit managers and, castigating them, unfortunately, as evil. I mean, more of his words than mine, but ultimately the public, the general public is crying for these things to be solved. And if we don't want to end up the direction of single payer. So it's incumbent upon us that are sort of seeing this field to go, here's what you should do instead.
That's exactly right. And one of the things, but back to just the evolution of one, being on the channels side of the house within now Pareto, wanting to be a steward of my partners. The jersey that you're wearing is really important. And so you initially talked about why I landed with Pareto. And so a big part of it was mission statement, culture, the people, everything you just talked about, my personal connection, having lost someone who was very dear to me to cancer, and just seeing the rat race that went around with her visits and the way that game was played. But it was also around, if I want to go out and create an ecosystem using my network, which is built upon trust and stewardship and reliability and accountability, I have to have people behind me that can study things like the CIA. They can study things like what's happening in the market. So not just the defendable side, the reactive side. So government comes in and a regulation occurs and you got to prepare for it, be ready for it, but also the advancements from a tech standpoint. And so if you look at what's happened with us, so we referenced you coming on board. One of the areas where I felt like Pareto, as I was researching Pareto, needed to do a job that was designed to help create awareness was you. You're an educator on what's happening in the market. Pareto is an answer, but you're an education that leads to an answer that helps solve the dilemma that my partners were looking for. You just talk CIA. We've hired some amazing talent. I mean, whether it be, we can go through the laundry list of names. Maeve coming on board, and just, Megumi and Christine, and I could go through, Kate and Lee. We've got a group of people that are true subject matter experts. So when things like this pop up, where we don't have to spend as much time, effort, energy into guesstimating what will happen, we can talk through, we can be prepared for, but the simple saying to our partners of we got you covered couldn't be more true than where we are today because of the people that we have on our team.
Well, regardless of what regulations ever come down, doing the right thing will never be out of style, right? Doing things that are good for other people, right? So if you know that you're doing things that are ethical, moral, you're solving a problem, you're doing it in a way that's clean, yes, those things will happen and they will cause you to iterate your business, but the core function of your business is to deliver on its promises. And if you're doing that, you will be able to sort of thrive throughout any changes that happen in the marketplace. And that's one of the things that I've sort of latched onto is it's clearly meeting the confluence of demand in the marketplace. And it's not just meeting it in a sales processes, but it's delivering on the back end. And so there's staying power, there's stickiness to it. And the people still voluntarily choose it every year that they renew with no penalties or no restrictions, and they choose to renew. The overwhelming majority do. So that tells me that it's continuing to meet the demands after they've been sold that solution as well.
You're exactly right. So you couple that, which is a key point. That was, you talk defendable. I live that SCDC model in my life. Is Pareto a defendable model? Yes. Why? People stay. Yep. Simple. And more consultants want to work with us. There's a demand. That's why I'm here. How do you go cast a wider net? So one of the things we talked through earlier was the complexity that lives in the buying process for employers. So just think about the conversation in the sidebar that you and I just had. People that geek out over studying and students of the game, and not everybody's like that. Not everybody wants to go and find information. A lot of people like to be on the receiving end of it. Tell me what I need to know and how often I need to know it. And so now, back to where we were talking through the complexity that lives in the mind of the broker, that was one of the things that you brought to my awareness. When I was delivering this complex buyer ecosystem and how buyers have more choices today, which means more noise, more sellers, which means they shut down. you brought it to my attention around, well, think about an EB consultant out there, which I've never been one. I was outside looking in, but you were like, hold on, like Wood. Like, do you know how many people are knocking on their doors?
Yeah.
Like, you know how many people you're competing with when you're getting an executive at insert name to sit with you? That all these people are fighting for their time?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a really important point to hit.
Well, I imagine like sitting there, I know the number of people that knock on my door virtually that say, I've got the greatest solution in the world and I want to talk to you about it. I mean, it's multiple times a day. Imagine you're in a position of the consultant whose role is to vet and place those solutions. I mean, I've had people tell me their inbox is just flooded every single day with somebody promising the world. There are thousands of those solutions out there, right? So cutting through the veil, I'm almost in you as you're describing it. I'm thinking about buyer's dilemma, employer and consultant. Employer's got a lot of people calling on them. Consultant's got a lot of people calling, but they're partners, right, in this ecosystem. I'm picturing like toothpick going through 2 olives and a martini, and ultimately you need something that pierces through the noise on both of those things.
That's exactly
ties them together, but cuts right through everything simultaneously. And again, I sort of envision that's a little bit of what we have here with us, and it may not always be the case, right? We're in a space right now that is so hot, and there are so many new entrants into the market.
Oh, yeah.
People seeing this as an opportunity from private equity. I mean, overseas investment. There's a lot of money flooding into our space,
especially because the healthcare space is one that, I mean,
$4.5 trillion.
Well, and just face it, like if you walk around in most places, people aren't getting healthier by design.
Yep.
And so it's just going to be a natural sustainment of growth. But when you think about the EB consultant and you think about the dilemma that the employers are faced with, how many people are knocking on their door for time?
Yeah.
So they got to pierce through the complexity of, I'm an employer. If I'm trying, not those that have clients, that's a retention play. That's do what you said you were going to do and remain relevant because you're on the cutting edge of the evolution by bringing me the right solution, the right product at the right time based upon my needs today, not what they were yesterday.
Yep.
Like that's retention 101. Growth 101 is how do you cut through the noise? And if I'm a traditional sales guy or gal and I've just got one product or solution, I'm just going to go product solution. But consultants have a grab bag of solutions.
Yep.
And the dilemma that these consultants are faced with is I'm now having to talk to an employer who's had this rapid changing environment that they're in. Their demand on me post ACA as I support them in things outside of just benefits. Benefits is a key part of it, but what about HR? What about PNC?
Yep.
What about all the network? What about banking? What about merchant services? I mean, these guys that are great producers have these ecosystems of partnerships where they identify pain points within their clients or prospects, and they bring the right person at the right time that delivers the right results. The challenge that consultants have is, I've got everybody wanting my time that's in the healthcare space. I got 100 different solutions that are trying to get my time. One, how do I deliver that to a buyer where I'm specific, customized, defendable, and complementary? Good luck. And if you can't deliver that, buyers are skeptics. That means you're trying to take your message from your 100 solutions that is coming top down and going, hey, I'm going to bring this to you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, because it's the right fit. Well, why is it the right fit? Well, it's because it's what we've been told is the right fit.
Yeah.
Well, what about my unique needs? Where does it fit? And this isn't a knock on consultants. It's the realization that their world has become uber complicated.
Well, their responsibilities grow every single year, right?
And it's at this unbelievable pace.
Yeah. And to elevate your standard to be like a great consultant means you have to be a student of the game. You use that term all the time. But it's not just a student of the game. The rules keep changing all the time simultaneously. And so how do you stay abreast of all those things while you're still solving problems, while there's new entrants to the market, your responsibilities are growing? I mean, it's like a never ending, like I feel like eventually it's like blowing a bubble or eventually it's going to burst. Eventually, I don't know if the role of a consultant in the next few years is anywhere near what we grew up thinking a broker was going to be. I don't think it's even close in the same category. But the ones that stay on top and in front of that are going to have incredible careers, and they're going to solve massive financial problems for organizations.
For sure.
Yeah.
So you had asked me earlier about team selling.
Yeah. Yep.
So for me, within Pareto, team selling is two stakeholders. There's internal and external. I've got amazing people that are internal. If I don't use those resources, shame on me. There's amazing people externally. If I don't use those resources based upon the unique needs of the buyer, shame on me. It's my responsibility to pull them in.
Yep.
When you're an EB consultant, the modern team selling environment and I see it today. I mean, I could go through a laundry list of names that I won't reference here, but could give you the data that says those that are growing year over year, they got big books of business, have become experts in how they team sell. They're not the subject matter expert of all things. They're not asked to be.
Can't be.
They're the quarterback, and they've got this unbelievable offensive line, and they've got great receivers, they've got great running backs, they've got great tight ends, and they read the room, they look at the ecosystem that the buyer has, they understand what's the right solution, the right recommendation at the right time, they introduce and they shift.
Yep.
I mean, they're ultimately amazing channel salespeople within their own ecosystem. And they do it year over year. And because I've seen these guys and gals, I'm like, how is your book of business $12 million, $8 million? I mean, these numbers that are outrageous.
Yeah.
Like, you're one person. No, I'm not. I am a representation of a team.
Yep.
And that team is collaborative, and I'm the one. Think of it like a conductor of a band. They're telling what instrument to play at what time based upon the ears of the buyer, and they do it flawlessly. And so when you ask the question, or not ask the question, you made the statement, which is the right one, of the evolution of the broker into the modern broker, it's going to be team selling 101. Mm-hmm. As you look at this consolidation that's happening, we just saw it's public, MMA, McGriff, consolidation, it's going to continue to happen. Yep. The people within those organizations that remain extremely relevant as a consultant are going to be team selling experts. They're going to understand which instrument to play at the right time based upon the buyer's unique needs.
Yeah.
Chronic health issues, surprise out-of-network medical bills, inflated medical and prescription drug prices. These issues cost self-insured employers hundreds of millions of dollars every year. Add to this the rising cost of care and potential for waste across the life of a claim, and it's clear that self-insured employers need innovative solutions that lower their health plan spend. At Valence, we've done just that, developed innovation that shifts the current paradigm. A complete and integrated ecosystem solution driven by data, one that manages and simplifies the complexity of medical claim costs. It is through analyzing millions of data points that we enable employers to realize and fuel cost-saving solutions. Valence experts come prepared from day one, targeting the fraction of claims that will drive the majority of health plan costs. That is how our team lives the Valence promise, engaging early and often for smarter, better, faster healthcare.
I think I don't want to end there, but that was a brilliant summation.
That's a wrap.
Concept. No.
Sorry.
But when I say in the interest of time, and I think we should move towards the end, we've got about 20 minutes left in the studio. I want to ask you.
Has it been that long? Man,
dude, we've been talking over an hour, right, Nathan?
An hour and 4 minutes.
Yeah, so
it feels like 10 minutes.
You do talk really fast. I talk a lot.
Sorry.
See, me too.
Sorry.
No. That's great. That actually is fantastic because that means we get a lot of substance in one single episode. But I want to ask you a personal question. Mm-hmm. What does success look like for you here, man? I mean, I really would love to hear because you've got a vision.
Right.
You came in to do a thing. Mm-hmm. You came in to help us expand channel that wasn't intentionally sort of focused on prior to your coming on board. So what do you envision success looks like?
Great question. So, I mean, I've obviously got my normal metrics, and that's not how I'm going to answer this. So for me, success is defined, which is why I came to Pareto. So I've got two people that I'm concerned with. I feel like I've got an opportunity to give back. And the way I can give back is I know the impact that Christina went through and the impact it had on her employer when she got diagnosed with what she got diagnosed with. So one, how do I create education by leveraging my gifts to be able to help my partners spread the gospel of Pareto to employers that otherwise wouldn't have been in a pickle. And we're not a fit for everyone, but we're a fit for a lot. Mm-hmm. And so it's my job to create an ecosystem of abundance where people learn that. So for me, success is, can I get more partners that evolve their collaboration with Pareto, that drive outcomes so that their consultants stay longer, they become more effective, they use us as a Sherpa for how they sell, and then ultimately that leads to more mid-market employers, at not the employer level, at the employee level, that can use some of the cost containment solutions and some of the things that we provide. It hits them to help reduce the strain that's happening in this country with regards to healthcare.
Yeah, I almost look at it as like a moral obligation. Once you sort of understand this, right? You feel compelled that you have to share. Mm-hmm. And it's let's like take the ParetoHealth off for a second. Self-funding for small to mid-sized employers. Mm-hmm. Captives maybe being the most efficient, stable way to do that over the long haul. Mm-hmm. But it's raising their general level of understanding and awareness that there is a way. There's a different way than you're accustomed to. Mm-hmm. And if you're getting the outcomes that you are dissatisfied with over and over again, Well, you got to go explore a different way. And so for me, success alongside of you will be, when do we get to a tipping point where a captive, whether it's Pareto or the captive kind of marketplace, becomes so normal that people go, yeah, of course I'm in a captive. It's the most obvious decision for us at our size, right? Like where it's not like, oh, it seems novel and still relatively niche. And it is when you look at the sheer data.
Yeah.
To where we go, well, yeah, you're fully insured still. Why? Right? Oh, you went with level funding. Well, why'd you do that? The captive is clearly a better choice. That is where I want to get the marketplace to look at a captive. And not all are designed exactly the same way. They're not all equal. But the captive as a solution or as an ecosystem, as a vehicle, I think is probably the best way to look at it, is so normal that it just becomes like, yeah, obviously that's what you do in this size segment. I think we can get there. It comes with education and awareness.
100% agree with you. So looking at the two things that I'm trying to spend my waking moment focused on is getting our partners to cast a wider net with how they partner with us, because we're achieving desired results by helping them evolve, by being a good steward for them. That in turn trickles down to consultants who can be more educated, more empowered to take action. When they take action, they in turn go out and spread the story with employers that ultimately choose Pareto, that in turn have an impact on employees. When we do those things, the natural byproduct of that is going to be exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
So I 100% agree in the desired outcomes. I just look at this path as a means of being able to get there and get there quick.
And then at that point, perhaps the marketplace dynamics change, and there are other things that arise out of a necessity, right, to solve different problems. But I just look at knowing what I know right now, demand for what this thing does, and it's not just what we do, but demand for something better than we've traditionally gotten health insurance. People will debate whether health insurance is broken or health insurance is working exactly as it's designed by the stakeholders. We can have that debate ad nauseum. But at the end of the day, the employer that's sitting in the middle, that's at the mercy of this system, is the one that's struggling financially. And that's trickling down, of course, to employees, that a family has to spend $25,000 a year just to have the right to be able to actually consume healthcare. I mean, that's where we're at these days. Yeah. It's unsustainable is not even the right word, because it's more of a collapsible event than anything else if we don't come up with something different that the rest of the market's doing.
We all got to play our part.
Yeah, dude.
I couldn't agree more.
You pick your channel and you do your best in that channel.
Health is wealth, as they say.
Health is wealth, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's have a second podcast where we talk about how we make America healthy again. But
I'd love that.
Longer, hard conversation.
By the way, this was long awaited.
I'm glad we did it, man.
I'm appreciative that you gave me the opportunity.
Dude, I'm appreciative that you wanted to do it too, man.
Sure.
I mean, hopefully you obviously enlighten the audience of what you know. And I think just based on your experience and your ability, we didn't even really cover your ability to build relationship at the highest level of partner organizations. I've never seen anybody like that.
I might have another trip come out to Dallas.
Okay, maybe that'll be the episode number 2. But just in the interest of time in the audience, Sean, why don't you just give us your closing thoughts, if you don't mind, sum up the episode.
I mean, well, I think the biggest thing I would say just in closing is that, super grateful again for this. But I think anyone that's hearing this, and there's a lot of people that obviously listen to you and tune in to you for insights. Biggest takeaway is be kind, be focused on others, be a steward of your craft, and take the opportunity to take action, execute on something that's greater than your own good. And for me, Pareto's it because of the outcomes that we talked about. But super grateful and happy to be here.
Likewise, man.
Yeah.
All right, dude. Well, I appreciate you again, Shawnee. And there absolutely will be an episode number 2.
This is number 1, bro.
Yeah.
First ever.
Good to see you, man. Thank you so much.
Bubble.